Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I'm here with Arameta from the Arameta Show.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are going into the realm of Disney, talking about the 2016 animated film Moana in honor of Moana 2 coming out in theaters on November 29th.
Yeah, it's this movie was released in 2016. As you probably imagine, it's been a long while actually since we probably last talked about Moana. I think.
Well, it's funny because the last time I think we briefly mentioned it was when we did our Frozen 2 podcast, and that was 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, it was, and obviously there's been the news of Moana too, and obviously Dwayne Johnson's going to come back to reprise his role as Maui. So we're obviously looking back again at the first movie and just seeing it before we see Moana 2, and we're going to potentially compare the two when we do the next review.
Yeah, very similar to when we did our Frozen and Frozen 2 discussion, in which we saw the first movie, then we went to the theaters and saw Frozen 2, and then we compared the two. And we'll be doing something similar here, except that we're going to be doing it separately. So you're going to get the first movie, and then the next podcast, you'll get us talking about the sequel.
Yeah.
And
By the way, just to note about this is that we've not watched like any like the makings or the documentaries or like the podcasts or anything like that. So we've literally just seen Moana, and we're just basically just reacting to what we've seen in like the last hour and so minutes. So
yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting about how this movie came to be. So, as you guys know, the directors behind it were John Musker and Ron Clements. I mean, sure you guys remember those directors behind many iconic Disney films such as The Great Mouse Detective and The Little Mermaid, Hercules, and Treasure Planet. And Princess and the Frog was essentially like their major comeback. And afterwards, they wanted to pitch various projects over to John Lasseter, one of which was going to be an adaptation on Terry Pratchett's Mort, but they couldn't get the rights to it. And so one of the proposals that they did was, hey, why don't we do a movie based off of Polynesian mythology? And that was when Moana came to be.
Yeah, and for me, like, I mean, when this movie was first announced, it was interesting because I think at that point it was what we just come off. What movie we just come off
We just
after Moana?
Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6. So obviously we were going back into this direction again, like where you've got another Disney princess effectively, and because let's be honest, I mean, like the way that they set these things up is that they try and like expand their Disney princess line.
Yeah,
And,
because this was like towards the middle of the Disney revival era. So, for those who don't know about it, and trust me, we will dedicate an entire podcast to the Disney revival era within the next month with Chris, aka Roddy C from TV Trash. So, the Disney revival era came out shortly after 2009 when Princess and the Frog came out. And that was like when, after the 2000s, when Disney were being a little bit more experimental during the height of the popularity of DreamWorks and Pixar. And Disney kind of like lost their way of just saying, like, okay, let's just do a lot of these experimental films, because the 90s, we know about the Renaissance era. That time was pretty much already over. And so they were trying to do some new ideas to get their audience back. Some worked, like Lilo and Stitch, and others didn't. And so we had Princess and the Frog to go back to basics, but it was technically Tangled that was able to become the huge hit. Then we had Frozen, we had Wreck-It Ralph, Big Hero 6, and now here we are with Moana.
Yeah. So, shall we get into the movie and see if it is going to be an island adventure, or if it's going to be sunk in the ocean?
Sure, let's do that.
Cool. So, we start with obviously Moana, herself, and where we find that she is interested in the ocean. Effectively as a very young girl, and they go into this whole musical intro. By the way, like the one thing I'll say about Moana at the very beginning is that they really do nail the tropes a little bit. It's like where here's the princess who, well, she's not, she's she's tribal chief's daughter, and she wants to explore the world outside of her tribe, and but then there's the hard, stubborn dad who is going through a trauma of himself, and has decided to say, oh, everyone is not going to go outside the reef of the island, and that is just going to be it, and everyone's going to be settled in their little place. But and also you got like the mother who's sort of kind of like in the middle between like the father and the daughter, and so you sort of kind of feel for her a little bit, really, like in her position. And but then obviously you get sadly the wacky grandmother, I think, character obviously had been done to death back in the 2000s, and but I like to think that they decided to do another spin on the wacky grandmother. Like she's not crazy or anything like that. She's not like, going out and doing like, all sorts of, mad things or anything like that. Like, she's very peaceful in a way. And like, she just accepts that, yeah, everyone thinks that, I'm talking gibberish and that I don't mean, but the actual fact is that she is pretty much the Maui, the last connection to like, the previous generations that, carried on the story of their tribe,
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah, basically the grandmother is the one who's telling the story about Te Fiti, who is this beautiful goddess who was able to bring life into the world and brought the ocean through this stone that is essentially her heart. And then one day Maui, this shape-shifting demigod, came by and stole it. And then just when he was about to escape, there's this lava monster called Tika who tries to defeat him, and he so does. And Maui disappeared for 1,000 years, and so did the heart. And basically, the entire world is slowly going into darkness thanks to Taka. And I mean, for a lot of people, it's just a simple legend. It's like, oh, this was just told by generation after generation. And she is basically like the last connection of it. Like, nobody wants to hear about it. It's like, oh, this is just a story. All the kids are frightened of it, except for Moana.
Yeah, and also it's kind of like that. It's one of those movies where it's kind of like, oh, this disaster's going to happen, and you got to talk to like the experts who, actually knows what's going to happen. It's like, no, let's ignore the expert and let the tragedy happen anyway. Yeah, like it's just it's funny how it's like, everybody says like, oh, I watch those movies like, oh, I would listen to the experts straight off the way, but it seems to be like every single like movie we seem to go into every time there seems to be like some kind of like impending doom. Like it's yeah, that person gets ignored, and then the doom happens, and then it's up to the
Yeah,
hero to save the day.
that is the trope of
Unfortunately,
every single disaster movie that you could ever think of.
that's one thing actually to think about Moana is in a way it's kind of is a bit of a disaster movie, isn't it? Like it's just like Maui steals this heart out of this island, and now the island turns like into like this anger and frustration, and just this wants to destroy everything effectively. And in a way you can kind of feel because like in a way it's been betrayed.
Mhm.
Like it built all these islands and like they did all these wonderful things, and still it wasn't enough, and so they had to steal the heart of the world effectively, and now everything is just going into darkness
Yeah, pretty
because of it.
much.
So it's pretty good storytelling in that regard. So in a way, it's kind of a bit of a disaster. In a way, it's a Disney princess movie. It has the tropes, unfortunately,
I mean, to
but
be
at least
fair,
they try. At least they try to do something a bit different with this movie, and they give it like a nice, refreshing feel. Compared to like some of the other ones that we've seen, even dare I say in the Renaissance era as well. Like I mean, we don't get me wrong. Like we've had some brand new takes on like how you deal with the female protagonist in this, and I think Moana, to be fair, I think also has like its own like it makes its own mark on this. Like they even say like, oh, this is not a princess. This is a tribe's daughter,
yes.
a chief's daughter, effectively. And so they go right into it and say, no, this is not what you think it is. And the one thing though that I will say is that I think they obviously still like tried to make Moana, I think, a little bit quirky and a little bit unusual in that. And I sort of kind of understand like this is obviously the Renaissance, sorry, no,
The revival
the
era.
revival era. Like this is like they try to, but by the way, like girls are awkward in like their their young and teenage phases. So I mean, like obviously where the target demo is. I think for Moana when you're seeing the way that she acts and the way that she does things.
Mhm.
So the one thing I will say though is that unfortunately there are some bits in the script which I think unfortunately make it dated. For example, like at one point Maui etches his autograph into the aura for Moana, and then says like everyone tweets nowadays. It's like and now we find out that Twitter is now dead, and
Well, I mean, it's not dead. It's been rejuvenated
well,
into X,
well,
apparently.
exactly, yeah, and so rejuvenated that everyone's leaving it now as of this podcast. But unfortunately, there are some bits that have already like what where I know it was released in 2016. I get we're in 2020, we're in 2024 now, going into 2025. So I understand that maybe some concepts were pretty dated back then, but I mean like there's something that's in other movies that still makes it timeless. I mean, like even with Robin Williams doing like all the jokes that he was doing, they still make sense to this day, and they're still still be considered relevant because it's where they are referring to people of their time.
Yeah, like,
effectively.
even if a kid were to watch this movie in 2024 and has no context of the characters like, Rodney Dangerfield or Jack Nicholson, it's like, "Oh, he's doing a funny, he's making some funny things." And then maybe when they get older, they would know like, "Oh, he's making a Rodney Dangerfield and a Jack Nicholson impression."
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I like to think Rodney Dangerfield's been, around enough to be still even remembered even to this day. I like
I
to
don't know
think.
about the new audience though.
Don't know, because I mean, he's still like featured, in some. I mean, obviously, Rover Dangerfield is a bit of a is a bad example, but I mean, he's still, it does appear in various comedies, even that I still watch to this day.
Yeah, I guess
So
that's true. So if anybody were to see like Back to School or Caddyshack, I suppose if maybe the younger
yeah.
generation were going to tune into it,
But
maybe.
with this, the fact that Twitter is now dead, and where they make like a tweet joke in this, you can definitely tell that this unfortunately this is the problem I think that some modern Disney films I think run into is that they make jokes that are relevant for their time, not realizing 10, 20 years down the line that some people might actually not get what these jokes are effectively. But you can watch Renaissance era movies and you can still get the jokes. Effectively, I think this is what this. I think one. I think no, not saying the whole movie struggles with that. I'm just saying maybe like 5, maybe 6% of the movie probably struggles with that. I would say.
I mean, to be
So,
fair, I from what I've read behind the scenes, that there was a lot of tweaking up to what the story was going to be. Like I know that Taika Waititi was writing the first draft of the script, but then he was doing What We Do in the Shadows, and then it was turned over to another set of writers, and then they were tweaking of, okay, let's have this happen where Moana loses her dad in the sea and she's trying to find him, or oh, Moana has a brother and she cares for him or something like that. So yeah, this story was changed around from time to time, and I think that Musker and Clemens were going through some strain, and they were like working 12 hours a day, even on weekends, to get this finished. And then the same directors behind Big Hero 6 was helping them out, and then they were putting their own set of story ideas. So, yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I mean, it could have been a disaster, but I think that what we had gotten has actually been really, really solid.
yeah. So I mean, the one thing I'll say about the music is that the music is pretty good.
Well, yeah, I mean, of
In this.
course, this was actually the premiere of Lin-Manuel Miranda stepping into Disney,
Yeah,
where we have, him doing various other songs for Disney. Like he did Mary Poppins Returns, he did Encanto, he did the live action Little Mermaid. So yeah, this was essentially like his first time in which he was brought into writing a lot of
and
the
you can kind of
songs.
understand why he stayed because, Lin-Manuel Miranda does a very good job with Moana
It's
and
actually
relevant
funny
music.
because a lot of people are calling Lin-Manuel Miranda, even though that he only wrote for those handful of Disney movies, they're calling him the next generation's Alan Menken, which it's interesting. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I can sort of understand where probably people are coming from because he's like the new way that we're now going to do song numbers in Disney movies and in animated movies for that matter. I think let's be honest. I mean, when we saw Wish and we saw This Is the Thanks I Get, it's like, oh come on now, you're doing Lin-Manuel Miranda without
Yeah.
actually him being involved.
Yeah,
Like it's just
exactly.
it's a it's like Lin-Manuel Miranda will introduce a new concept of the way that we can really feel for our characters, or we can really tell a story, and that's the one thing that's Lin-Manuel Miranda does very well, which I think other the Renaissance movies I think it also captured as well, and that is that he can basically put a song together and it carries on the story.
Yeah,
And
and
that's basically what happens.
yeah,
We don't talk about Bruno. I think it's probably his best work, in my opinion. Everybody was singing that song
that's
when that was
true.
coming out in Encanto. And I think what can I say? But you're welcome. I think is a fantastic song. I think as well because it sort of explains Maui building his character and what he thinks of himself and how everyone gets caught up into it, and even Moana gets caught up into the song as well. And you think the one thing I was thinking when this song was going on, I thought it was going to be like, oh, Maui's going to brag about himself in song, and it's going to be like Moana's going to be dragged along for the ride, and she's pouting and saying, "Oh, you're not that great," and everything like that. But no, it shows how Maui is, seen as as a very well thought of god. At the time, and and it shows how convincing he can be to the point where he steals Moana's boat. So that I think is very good. He's very good storytelling in music, in that, and they do the same. I think the one weak song I think I will say is in Moana. Unfortunately, is going to be like the song when we see that crab character.
Oh, everybody says that.
Yeah,
I think that's a pattern because we said the same thing in the Little Mermaid live action movie. It's like, yeah, there's that one song that Lin-Manuel Miranda didn't exactly do a great job
I
with.
know, and I don't know if he just kind of like he had to stick that in because like what else were you gonna do with
A villain.
with that guy at the time? And by the way, he's not really like he's not the villain of the movie. He's just a side villain, if anything. And in fact, he's just if anything, he's just like I wouldn't even. I mean, he doesn't really do anything besides taking Maui's hook and locking up Moana. I think because I mean I guess maybe he could be considered like a
Well,
side villain. I guess in that regard.
that's the
But
thing.
besides that, I mean, like, he's not really integral to the story.
Yeah, that's the thing about these revival era Disney movies is that you have either one of two camps. You either have the plot twist villain, where we saw in movies such as, Frozen and Zootopia and various other films, or we had like the side villains in which like they show up for like a few minutes, we move on, and then maybe see another villain, they're defeated, we move on, and
I think
that's
that was a
it.
problem with like some of like the later Don Bluth movies because like we just got evil characters for the sake of being evil, and we didn't really like they didn't really like bring all that much to the story, and I think that is what separates out that used to be what used to separate out Disney from like its competitors because like you don't just bring in evil characters just for just to say oh hey what are they going to do to the story. I mean even Great Mouse Detective that had a lot of the bad guy characters but in stories in the story context they made sense for why they were there. And I think that's one problem I think we're definitely with movies like this because you can't just bring in a villain and then say, "Oh, hey, this person's going to be evil for like for a couple of minutes just to diverate from the plot," and then it has no bearing like on the story later on,
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah, it's kind of funny because I think that BBC mentioned this in like their top 50 best animated songs featured in animated movies. I'm sorry, I even said this in part one of that podcast. Part two will come eventually. I'm sorry for the wait. But yes, I'm sorry. I don't like this song. I don't understand why it was ranked up there. I don't like it, period. I just
It
think
kind
it's
of
got.
reminds me of the lizard song from Fern Gully, The Last
Oh,
Rainforest. Where it's like,
God.
you're a fine little snack, and like, it's just there. It's
Oh yeah,
like it's all about
we
eating.
have Tone Lock is just basically like he's like, "Ooh, you're very tempting, and I'm gonna eat you." And it's like, "Oh God, please just stop."
Yeah, it's like it's a why are we doing this?
Yeah, for those who like Krakatoa and no Tamatoa, for those who like Tamatoa, and for those who like the song, sorry.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, it would have made more sense if, like, if he was in, like, oh, hey, the villain of the movie, put me up to, like, taking the hook and making sure you never got it again, in revenge for, like, we're taking the stone off me
Yeah,
and stuff
but
like that.
instead he's reluctant to being compared to like the big-lipped alligator from All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah, yeah, I just so that scene just kind of like came and went really like we were just kind of along for the ride and then finally it's like oh finally that I hate scenes where it's kind of like you get there and it's like oh finally it's over we can get back to what we're doing
Mhm.
like so we're back to I like the one thing I definitely like in this movie is the relationship between Maui and Moana
Yeah.
and Maui obviously doesn't want to be involved in this whole adventure with Moana because everything that's happened and how that stone has basically cursed him, if anything. But then as time goes along, and with the help of the ocean, by the way, the ocean has a character in this movie,
Yes.
which I think that's one thing I'll definitely give this movie credit. Like it give the ocean has a character in this, and the one thing I'll definitely say though is that I think it is one thing that Maui points out that the ocean will help at some points, but then the ocean won't help in others. And like it's like, yeah, why is it so inconsistent with helping Moana in some places but not helping her in another? Like I don't understand why it does that.
I think the reason why it does this is because at some point, Moana needs to be able to get the experiences that she was able to gain in her journey so that she can be able to accomplish these things by herself, or that she's already at the place where she's at, even though that she doesn't think so at first.
Yeah, but like I mean, It's kind of annoying when you have Maui, and by the way, Maui's played by Dwayne Johnson, and so I try my best to like. I've watched Dwayne Johnson movies, like I used to watch them all the time with my sisters, so like it used to be kind of like a tradition that you used to have, and so I mean, obviously we've seen the Scorpion King, we've seen like San Andreas, we've seen like some of the other Dwayne Johnson movies that's coming. I think I'm trying to remember if I've seen actually any of the Fast and the Furious ones. I can't remember if I have or not, but. The one thing I'll say is that it's kind of you try your best to get your idea of like Dwayne Johnson in a voice booth, like doing all these lines because you can see it because I used to watch him on WWE and WWF back in the day, and so I'm sort of like know what he's probably doing whilst he's in the voice because I've seen him do it live on TV, like when he's doing his deliveries.
Oh,
So
speaking of which, the live action movie.
well, yeah, we'll get to that when we cross that bridge when we come to it. Like,
Okay,
what
fine.
is it due for 2026? Is it
Yes.
like well, it'll be 10-year anniversary of Moana, I think, at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So that's crazy to think about. So, but my what I was saying about Dwayne Johnson is that I mean, you try and take out the fact that you've seen him already on WWE SmackDown, and you've already seen him on various other things, and you're trying to concentrate on his delivery as Maui. And when he sings and when he emotes and when he does all of that, he does it fantastically. When he gets too excited, I think around that, you suddenly realize it's Dwayne Johnson again. I think that's the problem that he gets. I think when he gets too excited, and I think when he, he's not singing or he's not like being emotional or he's like I think then because you know what Dwayne Johnson sounds like when he's excited because he's done it pretty much for like the past good grief like 3 decades at this point. Whereas when he's going in a different direction with Maui, when he's saying emotional things about it, when he's like speaking his native tongue, or like when he's doing like other things that's outside of him, kind of like being excitable Dwayne Johnson, then you can really focus on him being this character. But I'm sorry, but when he gets too excited, unfortunately, you can realize, oh hey, Dwayne Johnson's playing this character, and you kind of sound like you're kind of like doing like story time with him really, rather than actually like watching a movie with it, to be honest.
I mean, to be fair, they could have casted any other like wrestling actor at the time to play as a character like that. And we were even joking about it. It's like, what would Hulk Hogan voice as a Disney character back in the 90s?
Would you say, oh, you're welcome, brother? Oh yeah, that would Hulk Hogan wouldn't have worked. But imagine the reason why they picked Dwayne Johnson because obviously he's American Samoan,
Yes.
so he comes from like the area that obviously Moana kind of takes place in.
Yeah, and
So
apparently, like they were able to show like drawings of Maui to Dwayne Johnson, and he was like saying, "Oh wow, that kind of reminds me of like my ancestor many
yeah,
years ago, and I would be happy to play this character." And he says to this day that Maui is probably like one of his favorite, if not his favorite characters,
well,
especially with his.
the one thing Disney's always been very good at doing is that they're very good at going to like big star actors, showing what they can do, and then impressing the big star actors. Robin Williams, I mean, had to be convinced in order to play the genie. And if you remember, like they said, "Oh, hey, well, we're gonna take some pencil drawings of like one of your stand-up comedy acts," and Robin Williams found it so hilarious that he was convinced that this was going to be a really good project to do, and he did it.
Yeah, and Tom Hanks did the same thing in which that they brought in like this animatic of Woody talking in the same lines of Tom Hanks when he was doing Turner and Hooch, and he said, "Yeah, I'm sold with it."
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's what Disney, I think, are very good at doing. They're saying, "Oh, hey, we've got this idea for a character in this movie, and we took some of like your material and put it over there, and we're going to bring him to life." And the minute I think that Disney do that, and they show where they absolutely like it out of the water. Unfortunately, sometimes they do it a bit too well because if you remember, like Edna Moe ended up being played by
Brad Bird.
by Brad Bird himself, and when he did the voice, and it's like and the voice actress that she she tried to impress with. It's like, well, the voice is there, darling. You don't need me for it. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's sometimes I think Disney sometimes do it a bit too well. I think it might be. Yeah, it's funny because I sometimes wonder because I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I'm deviating a bit from Moana a bit. I do apologize. Because Lou Morano did Alfredo Linguini from Ratatouille, and
Yes.
doesn't he remind you of like the guy who played what was his name? Who played Napoleon Dynamite a little bit,
Um,
and
which one?
the first one. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, I can't remember the name of the actor is. I do apologize,
are you talking
but
about the guy who played as Napoleon Dynamite?
Dynamite, yeah, yeah.
John Heater.
John Heater. I think I get the feeling that John Heater was basically picked for that role. a little bit, I thought, because the delivery's kind of sounded a bit similar to like, what he potentially would have done with Alfredo, in my opinion. So I don't know if like there was a case of that, they tried to do that with John Ritter, and John Ritter said, "Well, you've already got it with Lou Morano."
Well, not John Ritter. Rest in peace, John Heater.
Don't need it, sorry. But again, that's one thing I think Disney, I think, the again, like I said before, they will take a big star actor, they will put the lines in front of him, or they'll put what they're doing in their project, and they will just entertain the actor to the point where they say, "Oh yeah, I'm sold, I'll do it." Like pay me a lot of money and I'll do it. And so I think that's the fact that they did that with Dwayne Johnson, and the fact that Dwayne Johnson was, really impressed by, the work that they did. I'm, that just shows, great artistry, going on behind the scenes over at the House of Mouse.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we need to also talk about Moana herself, who
Yep.
is performed by a then 16-year-old Alali Karavo, who was just a
Well, what a weight to put on someone's shoulders at 16 years old. Like, oh hey, you're playing a Disney princess. What? It's
well,
like,
like she was 14 when she was cast.
wow, wow.
And we hadn't seen anything like that since Snow White, if you can believe it, because
And we all know how that ended. So
yeah.
like, yeah, like it's not a great thing to reference, really.
I mean,
But
I was referring to the fact that the voice actress of Snow White was also 14 when she was
yeah,
cast for the role, not the way she was treated. No,
I
no,
know the
no,
way
no,
it was treated. Yeah, definitely. I
no,
think we
because
could leaps and bounds then. I think
yeah,
many
because
strides.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, but the point is that all the other Disney princesses that were able to voice their characters were essentially like, very well-known actors or people who were known amongst the Disney family or Broadway stars for example, like you have Jodie Benson as Ariel, you had Paige O'Hara as Belle, and even recently you have Indina Menzel as Elsa, who was well known for Wicked at the time.
Hmm.
So yeah, or you have like major celebrities voicing as the princesses. Like at the time, the recent one was Mandy Moore, who played as Rapunzel. And so you have essentially like, hey, let's just go back to having a not only 14-year-old girl playing as somebody who is of the right age of Moana, but having somebody who is of Hawaiian descent, as opposed to like, well, I mean, I know that today is not considered PC to have certain voices of, characters that are of different ethnics or different races. I mean, it's true, but nowadays we seem to get more and more of that. It's like, okay, an African American's going to play as an African American, or a Samoan's going to play a Samoan, or a blind girl's going to play a blind girl. So we've gotten a little bit more diverse with our voice acting, a little bit more accepting of it since then. So I'm glad that at that point they were in the right direction, and she does a really good job, not only
Yeah.
as playing as this Disney princess for this major movie, but she also had to sing too, and she had to, do this amazing performance alongside with Dwayne Johnson. So I'm sure that this probably would have been a big feat for
Oh
her.
yeah, this would have been huge. I mean, like, I mean, but to have like that, and to know that, this is going to basically, go leaps and bounds for you if you do that, because now you're known forever, effectively, as this character. Effectively, I don't know, maybe that's what Disney probably had in mind, like the fact that because she's going to be in the sequel, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if they had in mind, like, yeah, let's get someone who we know is going to be able to voice this character for like decades, I think, at this point. So like, oh hey, here's a 14-year-old girl. She's super talented, knows what she's gonna do, and she can take instruction well. So I don't know if that was the thought process behind it. Like, I mean, let's get somebody who we know we can call upon if needed. So I mean, but mind you, Disney being Disney, I mean, like if one thing I think they would definitely say that if they did a Moana TV series, I mean, like, would it be a case of like, she would come back to voice the character, or would they just like, somebody like,
Oh,
from?
speaking of which, again, we'll get to that at the end,
Oh,
won't we?
oh, really?
Remember
I
what
haven't heard about this actually.
well, you remember what they were planning on doing before Moana 2, right?
What were they planning to do?
Well, they were planning on doing a series on Disney Plus in
Oh, wow.
2020.
Oh, yeah. Did we talk about that? I
We
can't
did talk
remember.
about
Oh,
that in Aaron.
wow. Okay,
Yeah,
then.
we did talk about that in Aaron and
Wow.
Patricia, where they were originally going to have a Moana TV series, and I think that
I'll have to listen back to that episode again because I can't remember it.
yeah, it's true. There was originally supposed to have a Moana TV series exclusive on Disney Plus, and it wasn't going well. And so, long story short, they decided to compile everything that they were going to do for this TV series and do the sequel. And that's when we were talking about like, is this a good idea? Because we don't want to have another Return of Jafar situation.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, well, the idea of Return of Jafar, if you remember, like, it was supposed to be like, hey, what if we did Aladdin as a TV series?
Yeah, but
And
they were originally supposed to release that in movies,
exactly,
and then
yeah.
I thought, well, let's just have it released direct to video
Well, I mean, you
instead.
can definitely tell, like, they hadn't put the money into it, to do that. So I think, and I think also on top of that, like, what Return of Jafar, what year was that?
1994.
1994. So I think they probably did the smart thing, and Nickelodeon did the stupid thing, where it's kind of like, oh, hey, let's take our TV series, let's not put any money into them whatsoever, let's just release them into theaters, and let's just hope for the best.
Mm.
Like, and then they'll end up being stinkers. So, like, there you go.
Anyway, but yeah, so Moana. So yeah, I really do enjoy the island itself. I think that the island is really beautiful. It was able to welcome you in with this great song where it's just showing off all the people who are weaving their baskets or dancing or collecting coconuts or fishing, and
Well,
you
I
really
get
get.
I get the feeling that they took some lessons from Pixar because I remember like watching the Incredibles documentary. That's a documentary that actually I've seen, and they talked about how like you can make something like look so immense, but only put little things on the screen in order to do it. And they do this, I think, very very well. Like you can see that these islands, this ocean, this all these little bits, like just they look so immense and look so spectacular to look at. Don't get me wrong, like Coco and like Pixar still do that and very very well. But I think Disney, I think, have learned something from that. I
Yeah,
think,
and not to
and
mention
yeah.
that they did this in Princess and the Frog, they did that in Tangled, they did in well, Tangled, it's a little bit different. I would say that they did that in Princess and the Frog, they did that in Frozen. Big Hero 6, Wreck-It Ralph. Oh yeah, definitely Wreck-It Ralph. Big Hero 6 probably not so much because I mean, you do get a little bit of San Francisco, but you don't get like a wide scope of it because the main part of the story was about Hero. But yeah, I would say like when you get that big landscape, you get that song that introduces it all. I think that they did that first, at least for the in the revival era. They did that with Princess and the Frog, where they had this huge jazz number introducing New Orleans and all the people that are in it and all the locations. And they definitely took their cues and they, amped it up more and more as time went on.
Yeah, and I think that I think that looking at how Moana is designed and looking how beautiful it is, like it's just you can tell that they went to great lengths and to figure out what is this world, what does it look like, what how do the fact that you're gonna have to do massive amounts of ocean, how's that all gonna work and everything. Don't get me wrong, like I probably imagine like them doing the ocean is probably somewhat a simple thing to do, but I probably imagine like the amount of computer generation that they're going to have to do because keep in mind like this is miles and miles and miles of ocean. This isn't just like oh hey here's this close-up shot or here's like this here they are just like around like swimming in the ocean. It's like it's on top of that there has to be like things under the ocean and then there has to be things like above the ocean and everything like that. Like it's the way that they did all of this, like they probably have to think very long and very hard. On top of that, like look at the way that when finally Moana gets onto the Maui's island, like she's got sand all over herself, and like you can see like all the little dots that like are all putting together, like the to do that must have must have been a massive headache in order to do because like you got so much stuff going on at once
Yeah.
basically because she has to be wet, she has to be sandy, she has to be dirty at times, she has to be in the water, she has to be back in the water, she gets thrown into the water but it's put back onto the boat again all wet, everything like that. Like that to be a lot of thought process into like designing all this stuff. It's very well done.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think that it's all very well done. I think that the detail of it is fantastic. Like you were able to see the ocean life, you're able to see above the ocean, you're able to see like the combination of the 2D mixed with the 3D drawings whenever they go into like the tales of long ago and the legends that was passed on from generation to generation, or learning about how the ancestors were once voyagers and they had to settle in islands because of this curse, which it's kind of sort of true because like around thousands of years ago, it was true that Polynesian voyagers would sail around and explore islands, but for over thousands of years, they stopped doing it. And scholars have claimed that the reason why they stopped is probably because of wind changes and climate change, and they couldn't, and like trying to look at the stars, and maybe there's some days in which the stars weren't very clear, and so they just settled in, and then they started exploring again after 1,000 years after they were able to get all past that. So technically,
Well,
this
maybe
stuff.
it's the fact that Maui stole that heart out of that island. Nah, that's the way it is. Oh god, I could probably imagine people arguing that. Like after watching this movie, it's like, I saw that Moana movie, and therefore, I believe that them people over there stopped sailing round because of that big mountain that had its stone stolen out of it, and then Dwayne Johnson came in and put it here, helped that Moana girl put it back. He has the smarts.
Yes, I
Oh.
wouldn't be surprised if there's somebody who thinks of that.
Yeah. By the way, I was talking about the animated effects festival. He actually won an Annie Award.
Yeah.
For special effects and for animated feature production. So yeah, congratulations on doing that. And also, fantastic casting also as well because Jamie Spiro Roberts and Rachel Whitley also won a Casting Society of America award.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, they did that too. So I mean, like some of the stuff that we said is actually really, really good. They won rewards for it. Like
Mhm.
it's just sad he didn't win an Oscar. But I mean, Oscar season that time was pretty brutal. So I mean, like I wouldn't be too surprised that Moana didn't really take anything.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, like when 2017 was a pretty brutal year for the Oscars at that point in time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look about like what film actually won in 20, what was the animated film that won in
Well,
2016?
Quincy Jones got an honorary award back in. Oh no, that's 2025. I do apologize. So yeah, I'm just you know what, like it's
Okay, I saw that. Okay, so for best original song when it was nominated, La La Land for City of Stars won that year.
yeah.
Which I mean, it's not too surprising because it was a big hit at the time where it was trying to like revive like, oh, here comes this movie about musicals, and at a time in which when that was like slowly trickling down. Nowadays, it's starting to come back because we just recently got Wicked as the recording of this podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, the movie that won for best animated feature. I'm trying to
Just
find.
looking at that now, like it's you have to think of us everybody like where we know a lot about like some of the stuff that we watch, but we can't remember it all.
Oh, it was Zootopia that
It was
won.
Zootopia 2 is going to be coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that next year.
Oh, would you believe it? And yeah, but I mean, again, like you just leaving Zootopia, like what were the other movies that were also
Okay, we have
like it?
Kubo and the Two Strings, which is a Leica film.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic film, by the
oh
way.
yeah.
My Life is Zucchini. I haven't seen that one, and The Red Turtle. I've heard really good things about that
Well,
one.
again, like it was a very strong showing for the Oscars that year, so
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me that Moana kind of lost out.
Yeah, I mean, and the debate between Moana and Zootopia is pretty difficult to say the least.
It really depends what you're in for, really. Like, here's the thing: like, as a Disney princess movie, I would say that Moana basically ticks all the boxes in regards to all that. As a film talking about a very difficult subject matter with, like, cuddly animals and within the space of a city, Zootopia does that very well as well. I think that is fantastic in itself. So again, like it really depends. What are you going in for? I think when you want a movie, I guess in 2016, are you looking for to put your daughter or your son or whatever in front of a Disney princess movie for a while, or do you want to get something that not just kids will get something out of, but adults also will get something out of as well? Like Zootopia was like wildly popular.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was. So, no, give Moana, we're not give it a shout. Like, we've been talking nothing but praise for it. I think for the last, couple of minutes or so. And but mind you, as we know, Moana does have its faults.
Sure. Yeah. I have to say that there's a really great journey of Moana where we do get to see her being like the odd one, where she's struggling to find who she really is, which, essentially what were the Disney princess of the Renaissance era were. But at the same time,
Well,
she
some of the revival movies were also that too. Like, maybe dare I say, Elsa was obviously, for front and center of that as well. Like,
yeah.
she was uncomfortable about who she was.
I mean, it makes sense because she does have her powers. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like
But even
take
then, like, even being queen, I think it was too much for her. I think at that point, powers or not.
True, yes, and also with, Tangled, Rapunzel was also trying to find out who she was because she was locked in a tower
Yeah.
for, 16 years in her life, and she didn't know who she was because Mother Gothel would coddle her and saying, "Stay here, the world is scary out there." Very, Judge, Frodo from A Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's what makes them. I think that's what makes these movies good because you take and also make these movies relatable. Like these are obviously these are fantasy characters, obviously that, but the situations that they're in, I mean, obviously, for putting away like, I'm locked in a tower, or I'm stuck on an island, or I'm, in this really wacky situation which isn't real life. I mean, some of the things that these people go through, like, the emotions are actually, they're pretty real.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why people relate to them that much. That's the reason why some people are fans of Moana,
Yeah.
in this. And it's not, well, I do say, oh, it's your typical, Disney princess movie. I mean, like, at the same time, it does have a relatable character that's involved in it,
Yeah.
regardless of, like, in fact, it may be something that, you and I have, like, seen for, like, the last, since the 80s, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, because the direction of Clemens and Musker, which they did also do the Little Mermaid, you can definitely feel like, oh, this is kind of like the Little Mermaid in a way. It's like, okay, you have 16-year-old princess who is stuck on this one location. The father's being really stubborn and saying, don't go anywhere, don't do anything. You are to stay here and you are to do your duties. And then she disobeys him anyway and goes off and meets up with this guy that changes her life forever. And then
Mind you, like, I think they did like Little Mermaid. I think and they used the same kind of like the animation that they had today. Like, you ever seen that meme of like of Ariel, like, being on the rock, and like, her hair is like still like all out and everything like that, and someone did like a realistic version, like her hair was just all
yes,
over her head.
I did see this one.
Put that up if you can find it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so I think it's nice to know they had more like animated liberties. I think from back. To be fair, the Little Mermaid was 1989, and this is 2016. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of time since then, and a lot of like technological advancements. I think
Oh,
from that
sure.
point.
Technological advancements, yes, but you can feel that the beats are kind of similar, but you also have a mixture of a little bit of Pocahontas in there with like the grandmother who's guiding her along the way, and you have this
Well,
element.
I mean, the grandmother character, I think, again, like I was saying, like, yeah, we've had the wacky grandmother character, like, a lot, but this one, I feel like, has been done differently, and I think that one stands out,
Well, yeah,
and
but
also, you can feel for her well, man, are we going into spoilers in all of this?
sure,
Are
why
we?
not?
Okay, I mean, okay, if you go, we're going into spoiler territory over this, so, I mean, stop listening to us now if you want to, not be spoiled on Moana, if you've
Go
not
go
seen it
watch,
already.
yeah, go watch it on Disney Plus.
All right, see you later, everybody. Everyone's going to do that. Okay, here we go. So, I mean, the grandma character dies, like
Yes.
in the beginning of the end of the first act, and and, you really feel for her when she goes because, and also like you feel a sense of like when they don't actually show her dying, but you can see that she does die because like her light goes out pretty much. I
Yes.
mean, by the way, you see Moana going out and you see like her hut and like the light just goes off. You just hear like this boom, like then you see the fact that she wants to be like a sea creature and it comes out from like under the from under the sand and starts guiding her towards her journey.
Mhm.
And that's a really wonderful moment. And but mind you, like this is where like this bit doesn't make too much sense. Where like Maui abandons Moana at the very towards like the middle of the third act because obviously they fail to try and like get the heart back into the island, and so she's there, she's defeated. I mean, this is the thing, like we're another thing I think that we have to unfortunately have to say about this movie is that we all have the big massive fallout. Everyone goes away. They all feel sad about what's happened, and then they all come back together to like for the finale. Like that happens in this movie effectively, and we've seen that since like we started watching movies effectively. So there's nothing creative in regards to that. But the one thing that kind of confused me is like the grandmother character comes back
Yes.
in like AKA like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so obviously they have that, but Moana knew that she was with her anyway, so like why was that such an emotional scene? I really thought it would kind of like they would have like had a heart to heart talk, and that would have like revived her, and then they would have had the big hug. I would have
I
thought.
mean, to be fair, Moana was going through at a very low point. That she thought that going over to this crevice in the side of the island where it was open, that she can be able to go past Taka. The plan didn't work out. Maui's hook is almost broken, and he feels really defeated. And he says to her that
To be
um,
fair, you gotta be fair because he only just got it back.
yeah, to be yes, I'm sure, but I'm just saying, like, it didn't, that also didn't help much.
Mm.
So, she is feeling at her low point because she thought that she had this great plan to help him out. It didn't work out. In fact, it was a complete disaster. And now they're like, Taka was so strong that they're able to like push them away far, far into the ocean. It was going to take several days for them to get back, and so She's and
But she goes off and does it herself,
yes, and
and
she does it herself.
yeah. By the way, I love how clever the ending is. Is that they know that they're going to be able to take this thing head on, but however they it can't get in the water. So I mean, obviously go around it eventually. But she gets around it and then finds out that it's gone. And like where's this island gone? Like, and then she comes to the realization. Oh wait a second, this person that we thought was like the bad guy this entire time. It's her.
Yes,
It's like it's so clever in the way that it does that, and I think that and then you get the whole big reveal. By the way, the animation in this is beautiful.
it
It's,
is. It's
oh,
oh,
like
it's so
just
good.
just gorgeous. Like yeah, let me just safely say this: you'll forget lava quite quickly once you see this. So like, yeah.
Time ago, there was a volcano.
Oh, it's like,
Okay, okay.
yeah. Yeah, so like
Yeah, go listen to our Pix Mini episode.
yeah, so but it has like the said, yeah, it has the usual like happily ever after,
Sure,
sort
but
of thing.
I was just about
And
to finish up.
yeah, go
But
on.
yeah. So then Maui says the line about when Moana says the ocean chose me, and then he says it chose wrong, and then he flies away. That's when she's like really really devastated, and she just tells the ocean choose somebody else. And at that point she's not thinking about, oh, my grandmother's still near me. She's thinking about the fact that she thought that she was chosen for this destiny of getting Maui and taking him back into the island to get the heart over to Te Fiti, and basically reviving the island, and making
Yeah,
sure
you
that her
kind of like
family is
the one
safe.
thing I'll say when I read that is like the ocean actually takes the stone back and just like drops it into the bottom of itself, and it's like, oh god, like I would have thought that the ocean would have like trying to like try and encourage but even the ocean believes that it's wrong, like wow, that was something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, she's thinking about the fact that she failed. She's thinking about that Maui's disappointed in her. She's thinking about the repercussions of not being able to save her family. There's no way in her mind that she's going to think about, oh, yeah, I have this manta ray as my grandmother who's my spirit and is going to come save me. No,
Okay
absolutely
then.
not.
All right then. I'll level with you on that then.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, so yeah, again, the reason why I was saying about the grandmother Willow comparisons is because very similar to Pocahontas, in which Pocahontas goes over to grandmother Willow for advice and what to do, and she's the spirit of her grandmother inside of a tree, and she tells her various things, and I guess it's kind of similar in which you have the grandmother coming in as a spirit, and comforting her and letting her know that she's gone very far and that her journey's not over yet, and she needs to not give up, and that's when she remembers about who her ancestors were and what she has to do so to be able to essentially save them and save her people, because she loves her people, she loves the ocean, she wants to be able to finish off her destiny, even though that she feels that she's not meant for this destiny. So that's why she decided to retrieve the heart into the ocean, not the Titanic thing, shut up. um so she grabbed the heart of Tafibi, and she was able to just go back on her own, knowing that it's going to be difficult, but she's going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
That is very brave and commendable.
Yeah. So the one thing I mean the great thing about it is that she gets back, goes to her family, and then says, oh we're all explorers, and we should go back to doing that. And so instead of like taking on the mantle of being the head of this tribe, she's going to go off and find a tribe of her own, effectively.
Yeah.
So that is, I'm guessing that's going to be one or two.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard in Moana 2, I've seen bits of the trailer, but
I've
it's
not seen anything, by the way. Like,
I've only seen like little tiny bits of it. I haven't seen the full thing.
yeah.
I think I saw that they're going to go off into the ocean, and they're going to try to find more ancestors, and they're going to try to explore more of what the world has to offer. And that's literally all I saw. I think I just saw a teaser of it. I don't think I saw the full trailer.
I've not seen the full trailer, and I've not seen any like interviews or like anything like that to like
Okay.
figure out like what the story's going to be and stuff like that. So I'm going into this, unless I find something just out of interest. I mean, like I'm going to go into this blind.
All right
So
then.
yeah,
Yeah. Again, other than that teaser, I don't know anything else about the story.
no.
All right. So, yeah, I have one more thing that I want to say about this right before we go. So, Yeah, I think that Moana 2 is going to be really interesting, knowing about what this movie was supposed to be and comparing it to the first movie. I mean, we know that there's going to be some interesting directions. Lin-Manuel Miranda is not going to come back to do the music. Some of the directors are going to be different. I think that one of the co-writers is going to be different. So I'm curious of how this movie is going to turn out because ranking Moana in the Disney revival era, I would say it's definitely a solid one. Now, I don't know which one I would prefer to be my favorite. Again, I have to go watch all of the movies again, and maybe I'll talk
Well,
about it in.
before we get to that, maybe we should probably rate this movie, and then we'll decide, like, somewhere down.
Okay, okay,
Let's figure out.
let's rate this movie as its own thing, and then we'll talk about
Okay,
that part.
so here's my thing about this. Like, so this is, a Disney princess movie. I think that is, is done to, the formula, and but then also adds in some good animation. I think also adds in some, good characters. In my opinion, even though they are sort of like, the characters we sort of kind of like know already, like, the ambitious and outgoing, were Moana, and then her hard-headed dad, and her kind of accepting mom, and who plays both sides. And obviously, you got the grandmother character, and you got Maui, who well, unfortunately, he can still kind of like he tries his best to walk away from like being Dwayne Johnson, but once he gets too excitable, you can definitely tell that it's him.
Mhm.
And then I mean, all the other, I mean, besides that, I mean, like besides Moana and Maui, and maybe the grandmother character. I mean, like there's not very many other people I'm kind of like really too massively invested in, because it's kind of like, oh, I've seen this character before. Oh, hey, here's the side villain who isn't really part of the plot, and here's some things that I've seen somewhere before. Oh, this joke's going to be dated, in a couple of years. So unfortunately, those things sort of kind of like submerge Moana, but not too much. I think in that regard. So if it was up to me, like I'm probably gonna say probably maybe I would say an 8. I
Okay.
think I've got to be honest with you, with some of the things that I've seen, and the fact that unfortunately it kind of sticks with with a formula, I think, a bit too much, and it only kind of like goes ambitiously out on the animation, and kind of goes ambitiously like on the casting, I think. And I mean, the fact that Dwayne Johnson is still sort of like a little bit of Dwayne Johnson in this. I'm not saying that's a bad thing for anyone who's a massive fan of Dwayne Johnson, because I love The Rock as well, but to me, like, if it wasn't for the flaws, I'd probably say 8, but because of the flaws, I'd probably say 7.5 out of 10.
All right, I'll give it an 8 then because I will overlook some of the flaws and I will say that the things that they were able to deliver were fantastic. In an era in which when the Disney revival era was coming back and they were bringing back Musker and Clemens to do their magic after they were able to prove themselves with Princess and the Frog, I think this is a really, really great film that they were able to deliver. I mean, it maybe not as iconic as, say, Little Mermaid, but it's still a solid film nonetheless. I really love the animation. I do enjoy the characters. The music is fantastic. And yeah, I think that the casting was also really well done. Yes, there are a few flaws here and there, and maybe it's not up to a higher pedigree compared to all the other Disney films that came out in the revival era, or maybe even all the Disney films, that came out in general. But I would say that this is definitely a solid one. If I were to like rank it
Yeah,
in
I
like,
mean, don't be wrong. It's a good movie. I'm
yeah,
not suggesting it's not watch. It's not unwatchable. I mean, like, it is a good family movie if you want to stick it on and have some fun, and you'll definitely please a lot of people. I think by I think Moana. But I'm just saying, as myself and as someone who has like watched like a lot of Disney films, I'm sort of familiar with the formula already,
yeah,
and
and
I'm only just kind of glad that the grandmother character is a bit different. I mean, like they gave the ocean a personality, somewhat of a personality. They've fleshed out the graphics and the animation very well. I'm not suggesting that there isn't something to be found. Isn't there's nothing to be found in Moana. There is something definitely found to be found in this movie.
yeah.
But I mean, let's be honest. It's not your first go-to movie. I think when you go into Disney Plus and you look at all the Disney movies that have come before it, and so yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I were to compare it to like maybe the films that did come out in the revival era, yeah, I would probably like maybe have it a little bit high, like maybe towards the middle, because there were so many other amazing ones that came out during that time period. Now if I were to say like, oh, in terms of like all of the plus 100 plus years of Disney, I would say that it's definitely maybe like around the top 30.
I mean, like, it definitely is like one of like definitely I keep calling it the reform era. I don't know why I keep calling it that. It's the revival era. The revival era. So the revival era. I mean, it definitely is one of like the shining stars in that lineup.
Yes.
And I mean, here's the thing about this. Would I prefer Dwayne Johnson to Robin Williams in Aladdin? And I probably would say no. And I mean, like, I would definitely say I would prefer Dwayne Johnson over Will Smith in the live action, version of Aladdin. I definitely will say that. But I mean, to be honest, I think there are like other movies. I mean, to be honest, I mean, like, the only thing I always say that just because Eddie Murphy, in as Mushu in Mulan. I mean, would I prefer to watch Mushu kind of like do that with Mulan, or would I prefer to like watch Dwayne Johnson kind of like interact with as Maui with Moana? I'm gonna be honest with you. I would put, even though I love Mulan as a Disney princess, and I think she's badass. I would honestly say I would rather see Moana, because of the dynamic between those two compared to like Eddie Murphy, kind of like just like doing his shtick. With that, and now that he does Donkey and Shrek, he's like, if anything, Mushu doesn't really feel that all that great anymore when I listen to it.
Mm.
So yeah, so like I have mixed feelings towards like all sorts of Disney movies, and where Moana fits into all of this. I mean, like it's definitely there to say, yeah, it's a movie that I can definitely get myself, I can definitely like. But I mean, compared to all the other movies, I mean, if we're gonna do that podcast, I mean, we'd have to sit there like for a whole 3 hours to
Oh
discuss it all.
God.
To be
I
honest
mean,
with you.
and trust me, like for Chris and I to do the Disney eras of podcasts, we did that since, God,
And that's
like
just the animated movies. Like,
yeah,
if we ever did like a whole, like, hey, let's rank every Disney movie, we'd be here forever, to
yeah.
be honest with you.
Oh geez,
Yeah,
that is a nightmare to think about.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wrapping up the Disney Eras podcast. I can't imagine doing like the live action movies and then the TV shows don't even get me started about the dedicated fans of the theme parks. I cannot do anything
Oh,
like
by the
that.
way, and how don't get me wrong, like we're up for being like pretty hardcore with like trying to get into like all like the TV shows and movies and like that. And by the way, we've got some announcements in 2025 to
Y-
tell you about like how dedicated we're going to be to the TV shows.
Oh yeah,
So
for
stick
sure.
around for that.
Yes, but as of right now, no, thank you. I need to pace myself because I'm a human. I have limitations.
Okay.
But yeah, I would have to say that again, I will go into this more when I talk with Chris during the Disney Revival podcast. But in the meantime, I do enjoy Moana. It's still a very solid movie.
Cool.
All right then. So yeah, can you believe it that next week is Moana 2?
Yeah, and we're gonna go into this blind, and then I think you and I are gonna go to the movie theater. We're gonna walk back, and we're gonna be around this table again, and we're gonna tell you what we think about it.
Yes. And if you want us to talk about the live action Moana movie that's coming out in 2026 with Dwayne Johnson as Maui, which we saw the pictures, we have thoughts. We'll let you know in the comments if we are going to consider that, but in the meanwhile,
Well, we'll let you know. I mean, my thought process about this is, and I don't know what everyone says in the comments below. I want to really think it's like we've already done Frozen 1 and Frozen 2.
yes,
I mean, Frozen 3 and Frozen 4 are going to be coming out soon. I mean, like
eventually.
eventually they are going to be coming out. So I mean, like, but the thing about this is that I mean, you and I haven't really sat down, and besides In Search of the Crystal Skull, you and I haven't really done a dedicated kind of sit down with the live action movies, have we?
No.
So I mean, like, I mean, to be honest with you, this might be one of those, unless it comes out In Search of the Crystal Skull, which, by the way, we're going to talk about the future of that podcast somewhere down the line. But, I mean, unless we do something like that, I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not too sure if we actually will touch it or not. Unless we actually do find out in 2026, we're going to be covering all the live action movies at that point. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll have to let you know.
and trust me, that'll be a long process
Yeah.
filled with mediocrity. You just love to see us in pain, don't you? But in the meanwhile, okay, let us know in the comments below about what you thought of Moana. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think of the animation? What did you think of the movies? What did you think of this film? Especially since this would be the last film that John Musker and Ron Clements would be a part of right before they would help with consulting for other things as recently as the live action Little Mermaid remake, but they have not gone back to direct any more movies. So this could be their swan song. I have no idea because, they're not involved in Moana 2.
Mhm.
So, yeah, well, what did you think of the characters? What do you think of a Moana 2? Do you want to see it?
What do you think of the music?
Yeah, let us
Yeah.
know about the premiere of Lin-Manuel Miranda going into Disney after his major success of In the Heights and Hamilton. Let us know. Okay, until then, we'll see you soon. Bye.